Hello again, Gills fans. Welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Blood Chats 2. And I'm pleased to say, familiar face to Gills fans over the last couple of seasons, I have the pleasure of the company this evening of former midfielder and newly joined his former manager, Steve Evans at Rotherham United. Is it, of course, Alex MacDonald? Alex, appreciate you coming on, mate. Hope you're good.
Yeah, all good, all good.
Good. We've
It was
just
hard
watched the
work.
England game, haven't we?
Enjoying 90 minutes of that was quite tough, but yeah, it was good. At least it's out of the way now. They're through, and see what happens in the next game. Really.
That's what you can do, isn't it? I know it's tournament football and it's about getting yourself into the next round, and that's the positive. But there's plenty of work to do and plenty of improvements to do. And I'm glad I'm not Gareth Southgate, because we all like to be football managers, but he's the one that's paid to make the big decisions.
Yeah, very true. But I'm sure certainly over the years I've been involved in games where you've played rubbish for long periods, or you're in a bad run of form and you go on and nick it, and it's a sign of a good team. But you don't want to be showing signs of a good team in that kind of way. You want to be showing it by playing how we'll hope and pray that England play, and that's front-footed attacking football. And yeah, like I say, I've been part of teams where you're not so good, but you end up nicking something, and you'd rather be known for fluidity and how good your attacking flair players are and showing their club form at international level. But they're through, and we'll see what happens in the next game.
Exactly that, exactly that. And we've got a week to chill out before we put ourselves through it again next Saturday, I think it is. Anyway, we're not here to talk about England and the rights and wrongs of the squad and Gareth Southgate and all that type of thing. We want to talk to you about your career and obviously your time in Kent. So let's start. I think there's probably a place to start. It's probably Steve Evans. You've recently joined Rotherham, so it's now the fourth time that you've linked up with Steve. We know Steve's a character within the game. I think it's fair to say he's probably a manager that if you support a team that's not yours, he rubs you up the wrong way. But I think if you're inside the tent fighting with him, tell us why he's a good manager, and tell us why and what your relationship is that has made you go and play for him for the fourth time in your career now, after Mansfield, Gills, Stevenage, now to Rotherham.
First and foremost, he's a great man. Like, people don't know him or see him away from football. I've had a great relationship with Steve since I first signed for him at Mansfield, off the pitch, first and foremost. So he's a very caring man. People might, like I say, people might not see that side of him, but first and foremost, he's a family man. Knows I've been through quite a lot of issues certainly over the last 7 or 8 years I've known Steve, and has always been there for me, always helped me, always gave me time off whenever I've needed time off. So yeah, he's been great as that. But certainly playing under him, it's for them 90 minutes on a Saturday or a Tuesday. Everything else that's going on in anyone else's life, mine, his, whatever, is pretty much irrelevant, because he's a winner. He breeds winning teams. He's always sort of found success at whatever level that may be, at whatever clubs he's been at, whether that be promotion or finishing miles ahead of where they should have done. We did it for 2 seasons down at Gills. They did it again at Stevenage, and then we did it again in League One. So he's a winner. His standards that he sets every day is very high. Along with obviously Paul Rayner, his assistant, he gets a group of men together that are all fighting for one cause, and his recruitment over the years has been exceptional. And it's still, I said this in an interview when I first signed at Rotherham, I've still got that drive and hunger in me. Having been within touching distance of having success over the last couple of years at Gills and whatnot, and again at Stevenage last year. Still got that drive and energy, and more importantly, the legs, I hope, to still play a part in successful teams. And I don't want to end my career or the latter years of my year just trying to nick a year or two here. I want to try and make sure that these last couple of years that I am playing is full of success, and being in a winning environment. And most importantly, memories that I'll take onto a new career, whatever that may be.
Of course, that's why we're all in the game, regardless of the level. Is, you know, we want to win football matches. We want to be successful. But why would we do it otherwise, regardless of whether that's Sunday league that I play or at professional level like you do? That's what we're in it for. That's why we just, like I said, we just put ourselves through watching England. We want to be successful as players and as fans.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And you know, even as a fan watching Scotland over there, the first couple of games, and certainly now watching England, and you know, we all want to be there and say that we've been there when something, you know, remarkable happens. And you know, fingers crossed that in my career I've still got one or two moments like that, and that was probably the biggest pull for me to join Steve again at Rotherham.
Yeah, because like you say, at Gills, it was a funny experience, wasn't it? And we'll get on to that. Obviously, you joined through COVID, which was a completely alien experience to absolutely everyone. But we'll jump to that in a little while, Alex. Let's go back right to the beginning. Started at Burnley as a youngster, and but spent a lot of time on loan. How do them loan experiences help? Because obviously, as a youngster, as a teenager, or someone in their early 20s, it must be tough. You get moved around the country. You're not at clubs as a permanent player, so you can always be moved on again or recalled or dropped or whatever. But how do they shape people as a professional footballer?
I think it's a big eye opener. Certainly to be playing in men's football, where you know, certainly it's easier now looking back at as an experienced campaigner, sort to say, that when I was going out, I didn't realise the importance of actually going to win a football match on a Saturday and a Tuesday. When I first went out on loan, I'd say them first couple of loan moves when I went to Falkirk, it was my first loan move. I'd done really well for the youth setups at Scotland in the under-19s. I was just on the cusp of the under-21s at the time. I had a really good manager in Owen Coyle who believed in me. And I'll never forget my manager at under-19s and under-21s level, Billy Stark, who, even when I wasn't playing, gave me a great opportunity to go and play at Scotland under-19s. And I'd like to think I repaid that faith in me with him. Scored some good, important goals. That was when I was a striker back in them days.
Target man, I take it.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, so that was good. I enjoyed going away with Scotland, but I think the loans certainly shaped me a lot. A lot happened personally while I was away on loan, and you know, I found out that I was expecting a baby. My mum passed when I was 19, and I was still going out on all these loans. I think I went to Falkirk, came back, and then I went the next season. We got promoted to the Premier League that year. I went up to Inverness for the first 6 months. So I've gone from moving up to Inverness, came back to Burnley, and then got sent out to Plymouth. So if you think of like logistics,
yeah, that's
Inverness,
completely the other end, literally the other end of the country. Yeah,
yeah, and then flew all the way back down to Plymouth, so to go down on loan there. But again, another couple of eye openers in terms of how football's played and different ways of playing, and certainly like a setup. Training grounds and how things are run, from going from a pretty decent level championship that we got promoted to the Premier League experience daily to then going up to Inverness was a bit of a shock. But I think the younger me took a lot for granted. Just thought that I was meant to play football and I was going to go all the way, and very naive of me to think that way. And certainly when things happened personally, took a big hit on me. And to be honest with you, I found myself probably 21, 22 lucky to still be in the game with choices I've made, with things I've done off the pitch. So yeah, really, I had a manager at the time in Eddie Howe at Burnley who sort of said, look, I'll always keep you here as long as you want to be here. He said what he thinks for my career, that it's probably best for me to go out and join a club and settle somewhere permanently and get some games under my belt. And that's what I eventually did when I went to join Burton. So we sort of left it in my hands as to if I wanted to stay at Burnley or not. And you know, looking back, it was one of the best bits of advice I ever had, because then I went and had to go and forge a career for myself.
Yeah, so it was Burton, Oxford, and then Mansfield before Gills. But there's one point because obviously I want to talk to you about life in Kent, ME7 and that type of thing, but you've already touched on it, and without prying too much, you've mentioned that your mum passed away when you was a teenager, which is going to be hard for anyone, regardless of the career that they're in, whether they're a builder, an office worker, let alone being to a degree in the public eye and trying to be a professional footballer and playing in front of a crowd of fans like week in, week out. How big a blow was that? Obviously, it's a big blow, but how did that impact you? You've mentioned poor choices, which I assume came from dealing with the grief. But how did that impact your career, and how did that change Alex MacDonald as a person, having to deal with that at such a young age when trying to become a professional footballer at the same time? I mean, that's a lot to take in.
Yeah, but like I said, touched on earlier, I think I was a little bit naive, thinking that I was just meant to be. This was the pathway for me. I was going to go and have a successful career, and without really putting the hard yards in. My mum passing really knocked me. I was drinking excessively. I was putting myself in the wrong situations time and time again. Getting involved in altercations. I was hot-headed. I felt like the world owed me a favour. It's easy me saying all this now when I look back, and
of course,
you know, needed to get. But at the time, I just never really thought about any decisions that I made. Like I say, drinking heavily, drinking at the wrong times, drinking in the wrong places, knowing that you're in not so much the public eye. Not like I cracked it at that age, but I was young. And yeah, like I say, just made some wrong decisions. Didn't look after myself the way a professional should do. A few years later, I found out that Burnley weren't happy with how I turned up one time at the start of pre-season, and they wanted to do something about it, i.e., try and pay me up or get rid of me somehow. So yeah, it was a lot to take in. Didn't deal with it well. Struggled for years and years, and then I think probably the birth of my daughter was probably the one thing that sort of tried to change my outlook, and I got myself together and thought, I've got somebody else that I need to sort of look after now, and I've got this little girl who's going to rely on me to put a roof over her head, and I think that was probably the turning point for me.
And we're here 15 years later or whatever it is, and you're still playing at a decent level. So fair play to you, because like I say, it's incomprehensible as an outsider looking in, and it's the thing that we don't see as fans, isn't it? It's easy to make judgments. We see it at the top level and at lower levels. We see fans make judgments on certain players, managers. We all do it. We're all guilty of it. But it's the stuff behind the scenes that we necessarily don't know what's going on that have led to these decisions, choices, performances, that type of thing. And no, fair play, because like I say, I've spoke to you plenty of times, and you've always come across as a decent bloke as well, and as well as being a good footballer. And fair play to you, because that's a lot to deal with, like I say, at a very young age.
Yeah, I think it's easy now sitting back and going, "Oh, you've played over 500 games, and you know, I've made a career for myself, and still at 34 playing at half decent level." Of course, like I'm delighted that I got there, but I am also very lucky that at 20, 21, 22, I had a manager who believed in me and put his arm around me and sort of gave me a cuddle when I needed a cuddle, and gave me a rock up the arse when I needed a rock up the arse. So, you know, as much as some clubs would have washed their hands with me at that point, I had a manager who wanted to stick by me, and I'll be forever grateful for him for doing that at the time. And then after that, I've got to then go and earn my stripes and go and have a career. And, you know, that's when I thought, sort of like to think that, you know, I got my head down and worked as hard as I could to forge out a career that's, you know, gave me, like I say, over 500 games and still counting.
Absolutely. And you say it'd have been the easy option for the club at the time, Eddie Howe, to go, no, he can become someone else's problem, tear up your contract, done, out of sight, out of mind type of thing. And also now, Steve Evans isn't the type of manager just going to allow slackers. So you're clearly doing something right to have played for a manager like Steve 4 times.
Yeah, I think so. Well, Steve knows what he's going to get from me. You know, I'd like to think over the period of working under every manager I've worked under that, you know, I've been certainly a hard worker, good for the dressing room, a half decent player that will do a job when required, and probably more something else that I'm probably more proud of is being a good bloke. So yeah, like I say, I'd like to think that I've left that lasting impression on pretty much everyone I've worked under, and I'll continue to do that for the rest of my career, whether that is staying in football or whether that's moving on to something new.
It's a good outlook to have. Right, life in Kent, summer 2020. Steve Evans signed you, but you joined us in a world that was very different to we knew it, and it's very different to the world we're back in now. Thankfully, we was in the middle of a worldwide COVID pandemic. So how odd was it for you to join a club and then essentially not play in front of its fans for an entire season? I think there was one game potentially that we played in front of fans, a trophy game at Cambridge, which was only a few hundred. So how did you would have to adjust to that? Sorry?
I think that was when everyone had to be like a certain distance apart, and if you weren't from a certain household, you couldn't join somebody else or in the crowd. It was crazy.
Mad. But yeah, how did that move come about?
I think I've been unemployed for I want to say a couple of months, because there was a delay to the start of the season. Obviously, nobody knew where anything was going. And from thinking I was having a future at Mansfield Town to having no future there whatsoever, whether that was due to COVID or not due to COVID, I'm not sure. But the manager at the time said that he wasn't going to renew my contract. So out of work, sat in the garden, pretty much like everyone else, trying to do 5Ks as often as they can. Barbecue was on every.
I was sat in the garden. I wasn't trying to do 5Ks. I probably put on 5K, kg.
Yeah, but you weren't the only one. Yeah, barbecue every other day, waiting for the phone to go. And one day Steve gives me a call and just says, "Are you interested in coming down to Kent?" And I sort of ummed and ahed about it. Looked at my other options, which was minimal at the time. Nobody knew what they were doing. It was a contract. It was a way back in to start playing again. It was in a decent division, so I just thought, yeah, I'm gonna go down and give it everything and try and stay down there for a year, get back playing again, and then see where that takes you. Ended up, Steve obviously was down there. I remember it at a time. And the end of the season came, and he just sort of said, "Do you want to stay for another couple of years?" And I just enjoyed my time down there, but obviously without having what I'd previously experienced when I was down in Gillingham was a full Priestfield. So I was excited for that. I enjoyed the club. I enjoyed the people down there. I moved down to Kent. I enjoyed it down there. So it was a good time, weird time, the COVID times, obviously, but look back at my time at Gills as really good in some parts and really poor in others.
Yeah, and that season where we all had to watch on TV screens and laptops was really odd. And again, we go back to perception of Steve Evans' teams, and we know that Steve has a certain way of playing, and that's generally, if I'm right in thinking, that's to get it into your front man as quick as possible and then get people around him at the top end of the pitch. But people then tend to forget that he has good players at the top end of the pitch, and we had good players in that side at the top end of the pitch. It was you from the left, Jordan Graham from the right. We had Ollie Lee as a 10, Big V or Big John up top, Carl Dempsey running from midfield, and then I think Stuart O'Keefe, once back from his injury, was protecting. Do you think Steve gets the raw end of the deal sometimes in terms of how he plays? Because, like I say, as a front 5 or 6, that was very good for the level at League One, and we threatened to get in the playoffs for a long time before, unfortunately, running out of steam in the final month or two.
Yeah, I think so. I think when you're branded with a certain style of football, and it's not the fashionable way to play football anymore. It's not the way that everyone sees the beautiful game being played, but it's still very effective. Still wins you promotions, still wins you games. And if you simplify your game sometimes, and you've got some very good players, you can be very, very effective. and that's what we were. We were efficient. We had some very good players. We used our strengths really well. We had Jacko at right back who put the ball in the box from anywhere inside their half. We had some real good people that were aerially very good, i.e. V, John. And then we had loads of clever players who would read knock-ons or know where the ball would land in Dems, myself, Ollie Lee. And then we had some flair with Jordan. So if you put it all together, we've got a pretty much bit of everything there at the top end of the pitch. And I would like to say we played to our strengths. And like I say with Steve, with his recruitment, he's not daft. He's done this for years and years and years. He knows players at every level, and he brought in, for what he had in terms of budget, he brought in the best that he could bring in, and we were effective, and certainly went all the way and nearly got there, and sort of fell at the final hurdle.
Yeah, I think the game for me was Oxford away. I think we were 2-0 up, absolutely cruising, and lost in the last 5 minutes, and that was probably what killed us. I think we then went to Blackpool and got slapped over Easter, and that killed it completely. But yeah, it was a shame that we never got to see probably the best of Steve Evans' team, because it was in that COVID season. And then we missed out, and I think everybody thought going into 21-22 there was that natural excitement about fans being back in the stadiums as well, and it was obviously something we'd missed for the best part of a year or more. That season didn't go anywhere near to plan. I think it's fair to say that squad should never have been where it was positioned, and ultimately ended up getting relegated. You only played 8 times before picking up what turned out to be a career-threatening injury. So just how disappointing from a personal perspective and a collective was 21-22, because it just went horrible. Everything that seemed to be able to go wrong did go wrong. From, I think we missed pretty much all the pre-season because of a COVID outbreak in the squad. Then you personally got injured. We just always seemed like we were chasing our tail, for me, Alex, and never really recovered. And it got to the point, I think, where something had to give, and it was eventually that Steve was relieved of his duties in January. But just sum up that season, if you can, because you had a lot going on again.
Yeah, heartbreaking the season was, I think. We didn't get going in pre-season. I remember we played a game, I want to say it was at Welling, and I remember V coming in afterwards saying, I feel a little bit dodgy here. And I was like, I didn't want to say it, but I felt the same. And I was like, do you reckon we should do a test? So he goes into the physio room, V does a test, he's positive. I did a test, I'm positive. So it goes back to the flat, and I was living with Demps at the time. And obviously he's in close contact with me, so he had to stay off. And then obviously the football department got shut down for 10 days, and that happened a couple of times over pre-season. So we never really had a full pre-season under our belts, but couldn't really do too much about it. You can't delay the start of the season, right? Because you've had 2 COVID outbreaks. So yeah, I remember it got us, and it got hold of me and Demps. Certainly got hold of me for a week, that was for sure. So we were in the flat, locked up for 7 to 10 days, I think it was. And then obviously coming back into that, I think that was one of the fittest I've ever felt, coming back into pre-season. I remember there was myself, Demps, and Danny Lloyd, who were, I want to say, at the front of the bleep test. It was the best I'd felt. And then for me to pick up the injury that I picked up, I think the first one I might have done a little something to my other knee. It was in sort of pre-season time, and then I came back, played 8 games on the bounce, and then I did my big knee. So yeah, it was a frustrating one. First of all, going on to about the season, the whole season was just a car crash in terms of COVID. Anything that could go against us went against us. And when Chop came in and we nearly stayed up, and if we'd have got one more point, we'd have stayed up. And I think if I was fit over 46 games, we might have nicked the point somewhere. Then yeah, probably I do. It
was essentially a goal, wasn't it? One goal kept us up. If you don't concede a late one at Sunderland, if you score against Fleetwood, because I spoke to Danny Lloyd last year, And he said similar to you.
Yeah.
If one or two of you are fit, because obviously he done his cruciate in the February as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Do you think we've probably got enough about us to find one solitary point that keeps us above the line?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's probably the most frustrating thing. Probably the most frustrating thing about it. And there's loads of other factors, but you know, if you wanted to talk about that season week by week or month by month, we'd be here till tomorrow at 8:26. So yeah, it was a long, hard slog of a season. My first relegation of my career, which was something I was desperate to finish my career without.
Of course.
But yeah, not playing a huge part really hurt me. Watching from the sidelines for long periods hurt me. Not being able to help the team when they were down, which is probably one of my biggest strengths, certainly on the training pitches. Keeping everyone up, keeping everyone's spirits up, making sure training's still enjoyable. Although we're aware that we have got work to do. But one of my strengths is being around and the positivity that I bring, and you know, saying all of that. I was probably at one of my lows, fighting one of the hardest fights I've had to fight in terms of injury over the year.
That's it. You got to then you're trying to keep your own spirits up, let alone trying to worry about 20 other professional footballers. And like you say, you've got your own fight to fight, so you have to almost just distance yourself from that and let other people do it.
Yeah.
I want to ask about the injury, Alex, because it didn't seem straightforward. Is the best way of putting it. Usually, you get like a lot of reference. Danny Lloyd, he done an ACL. We know that it's 8 to 10 months, potentially a year, depending on how bad it is. Yours seemed a lot more complicated, a lot more mysterious. So what exactly did you do? Because there was a couple of times where you tried to come back, I think, wasn't there, and then broke down again. So just, if you can go into detail, just what exactly was it that caused? Because you were very close to having to stop playing, weren't you?
Yeah. Probably a lot closer than what people thought, to be honest. The knee was unhappy. I had a lot of swelling. A couple of different scans, and they weren't showing anything really major. So when you effectively, if you've got a knee injury, you scan it. Usually a scan can say, oh, you've got an ACL, an MCL, cartilage tear, this is how bad it is, blah, blah, blah. The scans weren't picking up on whatever was going on. So I'd rehab probably 6 weeks for a bit of bone bruising, which was apparent on the scan, which is a hard one to really tell when that's over, because you can't really see how bruised your bones are, right, from the outside. So everything's going off pain, and everything's going off how the knee actually feels, rather than any sort of, you've got to tick all the boxes and then you move on to the next stage. So the bone bruising was the first thing that we were trying to deal with. Did a certain amount of rehab, started running again, and the pain was there, if not a little bit worse. And I remember saying to the physios at the time, like, this isn't what we think it is. Like, I've had a couple of knee ops previously where I've had a little bit of cartilage taken out. I've had bone bruising, really bad in my other knee when I hyperextended that one time when I was at Mansfield. I said, this doesn't feel right. So we went in for another scan, went to see the specialist again in Harley Street. And he said, Alex, I'm not really too happy with the knee here. I think the best course of action is if we go inside, put you under, go inside and actually have a look and see what we can see, because we ain't confident from the scans that we can see what's going on. I said, all right, okay. So what, like, when I come back round, like, if I've got, like, if I'm awake and look down at my knee and there's nothing on there apart from a bandage, like, everything's fine. He was like, yeah, that's the outcome we imagine. He said, but if you wake up and you've got a brace on your knee or whatever, you know that something's major has gone on in your knee. So it comes back round, see the big sparkly lights, come back round and look down to my leg, and there's a huge brace on my knee. So then obviously when you first come round, you wake up and you're trying to say to the anaesthetist who's next to you, who's brought you back around, like, what's actually happened here? I knew that, and obviously you're still a bit away with the ferries. So I tried to say, and he was like, oh, the surgeon will come out soon and he'll explain everything to you. And I said, well, is it not simple? And he was like, no, I don't think I've seen anything like this before. Right. So effectively what had happened, the cartilage in between your knee, the cartilage had came off it came off the bone, completely came off the bone, and it had a big tear through it. So a usual cartilage tear, if it's a tear and it doesn't get shaved away and it gets stitched back together, is probably about 6 months just on its own, 5-6 months. So that the tear was repaired, but then not only that, then they had to stitch the cartilage back down to my bone in my leg to keep it in place as well. So that all happened. Rehab, did loads of different things to try and help the knee settle, sort the pain out, still had a little bit of bone bruising in there. Rounds and rounds of PRP into the knee joint, constantly kept breaking down, still had pain, couldn't walk freely on it, couldn't run freely on it. Eventually, I went back into the specialist in London, and he sort of said, look, this is we've tried everything now. The last chance saloon for us is to do the PRP, but we need to inject it into your bones.
What's PRP, sorry?
So where they take the blood out your arm, then they spin it.
Right.
And then they put all the good stuff into the good parts of your blood into your joint.
Okay.
To help or boost sort of the knee healing effectively.
Okay.
So they did 6 rounds of that first of all, just into the knee joint, and he said, well, we're going to have to put you to sleep for this one. So because it's painful, and you can imagine injecting into a bone. So they did that, and then probably 2 months after that they did that, we started running again. And the pain that I was feeling was it was there, but it was so tame compared to where it used to be.
Okay.
I remember just saying to the physio, look, the pain's there. Like if I have to manage things moving forward in terms of training load and whatever, then that's what we have to do. And I had a manager in Neil Harrison at the time who really understood the situation. Said to me there was no pressure for me to train every day. Would never affect team selection or whatever if I did get back fit. And then just sort of cracked on from there, and was on painkillers daily. Missed a session here and there, missed a bit of extra stuff at the end of sessions, or played parts in bits of sessions, so dipped my toe in and out, and then came back for pre-season, and then sort of said, right, I'm going to have one last crack at this, and if it breaks down, it breaks down. And luckily enough, I went on to make quite a few appearances that season.
I think you made the most, which is astonishing. I'm not saying you played 90 minutes and everything, but I think it was around 50 that season that we ended up staying up. One slightly strange experience that come from you being injured was you became assistant manager for a period of time, which we can look back and laugh at now. But at the time, it was absolutely astonishing to, and I mean this with no disrespect to you, but you're a player. So to then be told that you're assistant to Steve Lovell, who we know is a club legend, a top bloke, but's done it a few times with varying degrees of success, a familiar face, I think is probably the way to put it. Talk us through the process and how we got to a conversation where they said, Macca, do you want to be assistant manager in a relegation battle?
I think it probably came from being probably one of the most experienced players in the dressing room. To the club probably not really knowing what direction they're going to go in terms of, it was just before January, I want to say, or the start of January or whenever it was.
Yeah, it was in the middle of the window, weren't it?
Yeah, you're in a transfer window. You're not sure whether you're going to back a manager and have a good window. And at this point, we had all of our best players linked with everywhere else. So where you're going to back a manager, bring in someone and let them have 2 weeks in the transfer market and try and keep the club up and give the best opportunity for a new manager and the club to stay in the league, or whether you just sort of take your time and try and pick your next manager wisely. It just weren't the right time of the season to be taking long to make decisions. So when the opportunity came, I remember being pulled upstairs to see the chairman at the time, and Gaz and Jammer and everyone were in the room, and they asked me would I do it, and I didn't hesitate at all. I was injured at the time. Obviously knew the group of players. What didn't know about Loves coming in at the time.
So you didn't even know you were going to be assistant manager too?
Yeah, they didn't really. They just said, "Do you want to help out?"
Oh, okay.
And I was, like I said, I didn't hesitate once to do it. And then the next day, came in back upstairs with the chairman. Right, we're going to do it. Loves is going to come in. You'll help Loves, take sessions, do whatever. And it was a role that I really took seriously. I put my own injury away for a month and concentrated solely on doing that role. I didn't do any rehab, and everything took a backseat to it. I was getting in at work at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. I was leaving at 5 o'clock at night. And once I'd left, I'd be on my iPad all night watching opposition, how we can hurt them, strengths, weaknesses, putting together presentations for the players for the next couple of days, for the few days before the game. On the phone constantly to Jordan Burton, who was our analyst at the time, trying to say, no, I don't want it to be presented like this, and then presented in front of the players. You know, this meeting that I put together was a role I took really seriously. But when it comes to sort of training ground and how the training sort of looked, that was more where Loves did his parts, and he did, you know, what he's always done, sort of thing, on the training ground and how the sessions would look. So it was, like I say, it was a role that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed from an experience point of view, but it's a role that I gave my absolute everything towards. And certainly, as well, you can look back at it, and we all know what happened during that spell in terms of one of the games. But it was an experience, and it was something that has either waved me off going into that side of things when I finish, or give me the bug to really, really get my teeth stuck into it.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. Is it something that we might see Alex MacDonald, the coach, when the boots do eventually get hung up?
Yeah, potentially. The longer and longer I stay in football, Mike, it's harder to stay away. There's got to be some sort of role in there for me somewhere, whether that be a coach, pundit, on the telly, presenting. I don't know what it is. I've got loads of things that I'm passionate about, but the coaching side of things and that wanting to win and that drive for success, I don't think will ever leave me.
Stay tuned, I suppose, but still going strong at the moment. I think it's fair to say that you became something of a fan favourite in ME7. So just I know how pleased you were to get back playing. I can see that just by looking at the face and the fact that how you've spoken about that injury battle and the stuff that you had to go through to get back out onto the pitch. But 50 times in all in 22-23, which was the very definition of a season of two halves. But again, how happy were you to actually, and you've said it earlier in the chat, playing in front of a packed Priestfield? Because 2021, COVID, 21-22, cut short for you, relegated. So 22-23 must have just been a massive relief in terms of your own personal experience of being back contributing to a football side, and also getting to play in front of proper crowds again.
Yeah, it was pleasing. Something that in that dark gym at Priestfield, when you're doing your rehab on your own, you dream of actually playing again and playing in front of a packed stadium and feeling like you are offering something to your team and your teammates. So that season was very, very pleasing. I remember having a discussion with Chop at the start of the season, and he sort of said, like, you're always going to get on the pitch to me. He said, you're always going to get on the pitch at whatever times I start you and don't start you. He said, just put your trust in me that I'll do the right thing for you and for us. And obviously when you've never been told by a manager before that you have to trust in him when he plays you and when he doesn't play you. It was hard to take at first. But when I left him, I just said, yeah, okay, no problem. I trust you. You know what you're going to get from me. I know what I'm going to get from you. And we had a fantastic relationship. And if it wasn't for him, I'm not sure I would have got on the pitch as many times as what I did over the season, whether I'd played too many games consecutively, if I was doing all right or whatever. So I trusted Chop, and you know, I stand by it now. If it wasn't for him, I don't think I'd have probably played as many times as what I did in that season.
Yeah, and it's a lot of games. Like we said, it wasn't 90 minutes for every single appearance, but after what you've been through, to come back and feature 50 times was incredible. Just going back quickly, Macca, to what you said about the spell where you basically put your own rehab on the back burner. Do you think you took that decision? Was there a subconscious part of you that made the decision to become assistant coach because it got you in and around the first team again? Was it almost like a weird type of break from that monotony of trying to recover from an injury, and it got you back to being as close to being a professional footballer just for a small period of time, potentially? Or
yeah, I think so. It took my mind, because I was struggling with thinking, I could be coming to the end of my career here. This could be it. I haven't gone out on my own terms. I've been retired by an injury, and it was difficult to process. Like, I make no bones about it. I struggled at that time. I found it really hard. And then when this opportunity came up, I just thought, great, a break from thinking about what's next. What if I do have to hang up the boots? What if I do have to stop playing? It was sole concentration and focus. And I don't know whether that was part of me giving my all to that role. It was getting me away from actual reality. It was escaping what was actually a possibility. So it was enjoyable. Like I say, I did love it. I did enjoy it. I did it wholeheartedly. I give it my all to that. But it was certainly a break and a breather from reality for me. And I think that's why I jumped at it so quickly.
Yeah, and I think escapism is a word that a lot of people use, and we talk about mental health quite a lot now, a lot more. I certainly do. I mean, you're fully aware, and I'm very open about it. How tough was it mentally for you? You said dark place, the gym, but I'm imagining there was probably some dark places in your head for a while, because like you say, it's that thing that it's not your decision. When you eventually retire now, because Alex MacDonald says, I'm done, it's that horrible feeling where it's someone's taking it out of your hands, isn't it? How much did you struggle mentally throughout that battle to get yourself fit?
Probably a lot more than what people know about. I'm very good at coming into work and having a smile on my face and hiding any sort of feelings. And you know, it's probably took me until I was 30 odd to really open up about how I feel and to speak to other people about certain feelings. Should I be feeling a certain way? And no, I struggled. I had a lot of things going on personally. I had a lot of things going on professionally, and wherever I turned, I just, was finding these sort of holes. And again, it was sort of that trigger from when I was younger, from when I lost my mum, that my automatic response is to try and run away and hide from it all, and sit in a pub in the corner and drink 8 pints and think that it's going to be all over, when reality is that that's not the case. And that certainly triggered that sort of demon inside me, shall we say, when I was trying to fight the injury and things. So like I say, it was a dark place, one I'd like to think that I would handle a lot better now, having experienced it, if it was ever to happen again. But the thought of not putting on a kit again on a Saturday, not putting my shin pads on, not having that winning feeling on a Saturday, I just wasn't ready to let go of that. And being forced upon you rather than it being your own decision was probably the hardest thing that I was struggling with at that time. If I decide not in 2 seasons' time that my body's had enough, I'm done with putting it through everything, and I decide to call it a day on my own terms, then I'd be happy with that. I'd be able to take that. But if I got retired through something like injury, I'd have found it a lot harder to comprehend.
Let's see, it's about controlling the controllables in anything, isn't it? And it's when it's taken out of your hands and you can't control anything that it becomes tougher. And no, I think it's great. Like I've said, I'm very open about mental health, my own battles, and the fact that we should all talk about it a bit more. But we're all still guilty of not. I'm still not guilty. I'm still guilty of not doing the right things all the time because you think, oh, tomorrow might be better, and then it gets a little bit worse, and then little things become big things, and you put yourself in a situation again. But I think it's certainly got a lot better. Goals. Let's talk about goals before we start wrapping this up. You wasn't the scorer of many goals while with us, but they were certainly good ones or important ones. If I remember correctly, it was 4. So there was a half volley at Sunderland, left foot.
Belter. Should have been 2 that game. Fell at the bar.
Yeah, you hit the bar as well, didn't you? I think there was a decent strike at Oxford just before you got injured. Might have even been your last appearance before the injury. That's a point. There was the winner at home to Sutton, I think, where we'd not scored for about a month after having 3 goals disallowed that day. And then the one that always makes me laugh is because you absolutely went off on a rant in the gents at the Player of the Year do last year, was the one that didn't actually make it into the shortlist for goal of the season, was the free kick at home to Leighton Orient in what was another funny night, wasn't it? The floodlight failure and them getting promoted and the last 10 minutes being absolutely farcical. But which one would you put down as your favourite?
The Sutton one. Probably my favourite goal of my career, to be honest. Not in terms of it being a fantastic goal.
Without disrespect, you're not renowned for scoring headers. So
no. Listen, I've scored 2 at my time, Matt.
2?
But no, not
fair play.
Yeah, maybe 2 or 3. Obviously not renowned for scoring headers. I just think that, I don't know, it was an outpour of relief that we'd struggled it for a period of time. We couldn't score. It was in front of the Rainmend. Big game. I was desperate for us to do well, for obviously for the players, but for the manager as well at the time. I think he was getting a little bit of stick that wasn't really warranted. But I don't know, it was just after the year to come on and score, they're the moments that you just hope and pray that you have when you are injured. And, for it to come at the time that it did, it was late on in the game, knew it was going to be the winner. Yeah, there was a lot of emotion behind that goal. And I think there's one picture of me celebrating just in front of the crowd. I'll take it with me everywhere. It was an outpour of emotion and just, delighted to get that feeling back of hitting the back of the net in an important win.
Then you probably felt, I'm back to where I should and want to be. Yeah,
of course. Them days where you're thinking that it's never going to happen and you're being told it's not going to happen, there's potential it might not happen. And then when it does happen, it just tastes that little bit sweeter.
Absolutely. You talk about, at the time we were struggling, obviously it was pre-Gallinsons. And then I think Christmas Eve or the day before Christmas Eve, 2022 was when we got the tweet that came out to say that Brad and Shannon were taking over. I think as a fan, it felt like we had a completely new football club. How did you see it in terms of, because it just looked night and day as a supporter's point of view. Even, I think we lost on Boxing Day to Colchester, didn't we, after they'd come in? Obviously, you can't do too much until you get the new players in. Then there was the game against Leicester in the Cup, where I think if we'd had the new signings in the team, we'd have probably won the game. But from there, it was just unbelievable, the change. I think we scored 7 goals in 3 games, having scored 7 goals in half a season, which was staggering looking back. But just how different did it feel as soon as Brad and Shannon became majority shareholders around the training ground, in the dressing room, on match days?
Yeah, Brad and Shannon were undoubtedly a huge breath of fresh air for everyone at the football club. The manager, the players. We knew that we were going to get help. I think it's practically as soon as they came in, we signed Nico. And then the rest of the lads that came and joined at that time. And then, they came in, they were approachable, they were around. You've seen them, they knew you. You knew them. Was trying to boost everything to do with the football club. whether that be community stuff, whether that be reopening the store, whether that be rebranding things, whether that be we'd finish training and Brad and Shannon would be there saying like, Macca, can you come and take a picture of the new baseball caps? And like, you just like, yeah, no problem. Like, no, nothing was ever a problem to go out of your way and help them. And all they wanted to do was just be involved in this football club and try and get it to where they feel as though it should be. And they were amazing from the start up until the day I left with me. And it was nothing but respect for them. Loved everything that they wanted to do. And even when I was leaving, I spoke to Brad and Shannon, both of them, and they wished me all the best and were sorry that certain things wouldn't allow my stay at Gillingham to continue.
That's my final question, and I don't know how much you can tell me. Usually I ask these types of questions and people have to say, well, I'm still under contract, so I've got to be careful what I say. But obviously you've long moved on now. You had a successful season at Stevenage. You're now going to be probably winning League One in Rotherham, because that's what Rotherham do in League One. It felt very much like, just from chatting to you on social media, Instagram, that type of thing, talking to you at games or at the end of season that you very much wanted to stay in Kent. And it felt very much like the manager wanted you to stay. So can you go into detail as to why it never ended up happening?
It's quite simple, really. I wanted to stay.
Mm-hmm.
The manager wanted me to stay. Brad, Shannon wanted me to stay. I think Kenny was on board with me staying.
Okay.
But I needed a better contract.
Okay.
We're not talking astronomical amounts of money here, certainly for what, since Brad and Shannon came in. But somebody didn't want me to pay me any more money than what I was currently earning. So the offer was stay again for the same amount of money for a year. Bearing in mind I was running a house at North that was on the market, and I needed to run a house down there. But that wasn't to do with anything in terms of, I feel as though I deserve this. I feel as though I deserve X amount, or I should be in line with this guy or that guy. I needed more money to stay down there. Simple as that.
No, we can leave it there. You've said sorry, just to interject. You said Brad and Shannon wanted you to stay, you wanted to stay, Neil wanted you to stay, Kenny wanted you to stay, but someone didn't want to pay. There's not many names left, so do we read into it?
Yeah, well, that's up to you. Everyone that I spoke to staying there wanted me to stay and were happy to get some sort of deal done. So that was what it is. And I think probably the most frustrating thing for me was, yes, I was there for a long period of time, right? I didn't play loads of games because I had a big potential career-threatening injury. I put my whole rehab on hold to try and help the club in the best way I could and give it my absolute all for a longer period than what was first thought was going to be the case. I then come to the end of my contract after proving my fitness again, after playing, like you say, 50 odd appearances that season, playing my part and doing, I thought, okay. I thought I had an okay season. Came second in the Player of the Years. I thought I'd warranted a little bit of something back for, like I say, putting my knee injury on hold, helping the club out as much as I can when I was unavailable to be in the team. Then coming back into the team, playing my part and helping the team by playing. I felt as though I was entitled to, not from an ego point of view, but from a professional point of view, when I sit back and emotionally I'm away from it now. Did I deserve more money? I definitely did, but I didn't get it. And that's the way football works sometimes. Certain people value at X, you feel as though you're valued at Y. If you can't meet in the middle, then everyone goes their separate ways. And then when it got to a point where it was standoff and they didn't want to do anything, They didn't want to offer any more than what they were offering. I had numerous offers to go elsewhere, which were financially a lot better than what I would have stayed down there for, if that makes sense.
No, of course. And you have to look after number one at the end of the day, and that's yourself and your family and your partner and your kids or whatever you've got going on in your personal life.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's when it got to a point where I was on the phone to my agent saying, like, I just don't understand how this can't get done. It's not, we're not talking thousands of pounds away here. We're talking a couple of £100 here and there.
Which is mad when you think about it now, obviously, considering
Yeah.
the fact that you proved everything that you needed to prove after such a big injury.
Yeah, and like I said, I felt as though I was worthy of getting a slightly better contract. Let's not say it was a slightly better contract. I've seen someone saying it was about the number of years, or I wanted 2 years, or this, that. I didn't. I was happy with a 1-year contract. Like, that was never, 2 years was never a conversation that anybody had. So,
you seem to have signed just 1-year contracts for pretty much the last few years of your career. So it's not something that's alien to you, is it? You signed a year at Rotherham, you signed a year at Stevenage, you initially signed, I think, a year at Gills because of COVID. So it's not something that's new to you. You're able to work your career around 1-year contracts. Yeah,
I think so. I think certainly when you pass 30 in the lower leagues of football, I think if you can get 2 years, I think then that's great, and it's brilliant for if you're someone's number one transfer target, you might be able to nick a couple of years. But I think everyone's got to sort of accept that when you are at that age and you are over 30 and you are coming towards the latter stages of your career, a 1-year contract at a good level is fine. You've got to go and prove that you can play at that level still, and then
get another year either there or somewhere else. It just it snowballs.
Exactly.
It's a shame, but then you went and stepped up the division as well, I think, which was probably frustrating for Gills fans, having seen you do well in League Two again. You then went and did relatively well in League One with Stevenage and had a very solid season, again individually and as a collective as well, because there was playoff talk for you probably 75% of the season. And again, similarly to probably Gills in that COVID season, you just run out of legs and maybe a lack of squad depth hindered you at the end. But it was a very, very good campaign for Stevenage back in the third tier, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was brilliant. Like Steve always does, he puts a fantastic dressing room together. I've met some real good blokes in that dressing room, some fantastic people, a fantastic football club, ran really well, lovely training ground, lovely facilities. I know I only stayed there for a year, but a club I look back on fondly, and some fantastic people there, and just a great football club. And I was gutted when we fell up short, and for the last 2 or 3 games I missed with a hamstring, and then Steve left, went to Rotherham. I helped now manager Alex MacDonald for a couple of games and just was on the bench with him, nowhere near as involved as what I was at Gills, but certainly on a match day tried to help him. And again, another experience, another taster of what it could be like if I do decide to go down that coaching route.
You're getting closer to a shirt and tie, aren't you?
I don't think I'm a shirt and tie gaffer, you know that.
You'd be a tracksuit gaffer. Tracksuit. Or you're gonna go all hipster like Pep.
Yeah, I might go a little bit more trendy.
Trendy Macca the gaffer.
Yeah, a little chinos and a little t-shirt or something. But yeah, it's a long way off yet. I'll decide that when I decide to go in through.
Something to keep an eye on, Gills fans. Macca, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about your time in Kent and also your career in general, mate. So thank you very much.
No problem. Anytime, mate. Sorry it took a while to get on, but
we got there eventually. We managed to talk about England winning just about. Gills fans, Macca is probably sensible in the fact that he took himself off of Twitter or X. It was definitely Twitter when Macca was last on there, but you can follow him on Instagram. So I'll put his details in the description at the bottom of this video. Go and give him a follow. He's hoping to obviously be part of a promotion charge in League One next season with Steve Evans at Rotherham United. But as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll be back soon. The friendlies are less than 2 weeks away now as proper football is on the horizon. But until then, have a good week and up the Gills.